Everything's changing in PR these days. So now what? Tier 1 coverage hits don't just happen out of nowhere. They take years of building visibility and credibility. Today, we're talking about how to lay that groundwork and how one of Sterling's clients finally got their Wall Street Journal shout out.
Good morning, Sophia.
Good morning, Deirdre. How are you on this holiday week?
I am getting ready for a nice long holiday, and that's why I think it's going to be so much fun today to basically toot our own horn, but also talk about just a really nice win that our client had recently and how that came about, and maybe correct some misperceptions out there about how PR works and how you get yourself in the pages of the Wall Street Journal.
Yes. I think it's definitely a very common misconception about PR that it's feasible to go out and get these tier 1 hits right away. There's a lot more that goes into it and building up to that moment that I think a lot of people just don't know about. They don't always have visibility into what we're doing. So that's why we're here chatting about it today.
Exactly. And it's true. You know, if you have exciting news, your company has exciting news, like you just scored $100 billion of investment, or you've discovered a cold fusion that actually works. Yeah, you're going to get interest from top tier media in that story. But by and large, reporters have to find you somewhere. You don't just send a press release saying, hey, I launched my company, come talk to me, and they all scramble to get you on the phone. The media industrial complex does not work that way. Even just the other day, I was reading a post from a PR person on LinkedIn who was saying they keep running into these clients lately who tell them that, you know, their measurement of success is multiple tier 1 hits in the first 30 days of contracting their agency when it comes to getting coverage by journalists. It's not contractual. Let's just say that. There is a difference between advertising and PR.
Yes.
Nobody on the editorial masthead at the Wall Street Journal is paid to give you coverage. They owe you nothing. You have to have a good story. They have to find you interesting, and your narrative has to fit in with what they're interested in writing about and what their readers are interested in reading. So let's just get that myth out of the way. It doesn't matter how many people you know. It doesn't matter how much money you have. You have to have a story, and that takes time.
Yes, it takes time to build the credibility as a company for these reporters to cover you, because they want to cover companies that, you know, they trust are putting out accurate information about themselves.
So I guess probably we should tell people why we're yakking about all this. We have a long-term client, Seku, and they create manufacturing equipment. They are not a battery maker, but they make equipment that makes batteries better. And they've been around for quite a while, based here in the Silicon Valley, and, you know, we've got a really interesting team, really interesting technology, but they came to us really just wanting to establish a communications profile. They were more looking for a strategic partner to just, well, we want to formalize our communications with our business partners, with our investors, because it's very easy for their story to get muddied in the excitement around EVs and electrification. For people to think that they're a battery producer or they're an energy manufacturer or something like that, when actually they make manufacturing equipment, you know, for the people who do that. So they needed some help aligning their messaging. How does that start? Number one, your website. Obviously, reflect your messaging and who you are and have contact information. And then after that is all established, you start building your visibility with those audiences that you want to either form a relationship with or want to clarify your position with. That doesn't start with the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. The biggest misperception in the general public's knowledge of how media works is that you just call the most widely read reporter and tell them, oh, we're here and this is what we do. And then he says, oh, of course, thanks for telling me. And immediately says, hey, guess what? Seku is here and this is what they do.
Yeah, kind of setting the scene for how this story came to be. The initial contact with Christopher Mims at the Wall Street Journal was about 3 years ago. Is that right? It predates my time on the account even.
Yeah, it does. I'll give you a little backstory. Before that, we had already started establishing relationships with niche publications and B2B publications around battery manufacturing, around EVs, around grid energy, around best storage, that sort of things, like the associated applications for the electrodes that could be manufactured on Saku's equipment. We started with you build a media list of your solid B2B and vertical and niche publications, and you start really establishing your presence with them through press releases, like when they do a test cell that was really interesting, or when they'd reach a benchmark with the longevity of a Li-ion cell, or experiment with a new material. We would send them press releases or even just outreach. So there was a lot to learn, but also a ton of interesting background stories there to develop and get the word out and basically establish that findability, which we say discoverability. I used to just say, are you Googleable? That is increasingly,
Are you AI searchable?
Exactly. Does
Do the
Claude know
LLM
who
love
you are? Yeah.
does Claude know who you are?
Yeah.
Our good friend Claude.
Yeah, it was establishing presence. And then, they had some interesting partnership agreements in the works, some interesting changes with what their technology was capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
They perfected it and experimented with where they thought, manufacturers were going to be able to recoup the most profit from switching the way that they currently do things. Because that's always in any business, the real story is it going to save me money and is it going to make me money? The press usually doesn't care about that. They want to know about the cool science. What can it do that nothing else could do yesterday? So you're trying to make those two things weave together when you're establishing a presence for a company, and also encouraging the people who work at that company to participate in the communications game and actually talk to reporters. You have to establish your level of trust, and you have to keep showing up and keep providing proof points so that people will actually read your press release or pick up the phone when you call. The relationship with the Wall Street Journal, other than just keeping the technology and energy reporters on our media list for when we had a press release to distribute and to pitch, our first serious outreach took place about 2 years ago. Their technology columnist, Christopher Mims, did respond and spoke with a couple of the executives over at Saku. And he even spoke with one of their partners and talked about some of the projects that they had in the pipeline. And it said, oh, well, I'll follow up later and make sure to reach out to me again when you have more to share. So we didn't get any immediate coverage from him on that. But he continued to accept our press releases and acknowledge, when we'd send a pitch to him, stayed in contact on social media, just sharing information with him and noticing when he was writing around the margins of what our client deals with. He is very interested in EV technology as well as AI and, everything that's going on in the Silicon Valley in general. So it wasn't like we were bugging him or stalking him. We were just staying in contact.
Yeah.
Once your client has talked to a reporter at that level, that is something that you want to keep warm and cultivate and acknowledge that's a big deal. Everybody on the planet is sending that guy their pitch every single day. I don't know how he has time to write, but he does.
Yeah.
Well, when he became interested again like that. It was, hey, you know what? I'm writing this story and I plan to include Saku in it. Can I talk to someone over there specifically about 3D printing? And sorry for the late notice, but I'm on deadline. So can I talk to him like lickety split?
Like now almost.
And what did Sophia say?
Of course.
Of
Absolutely.
course you can. Sure.
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest things I learned from this opportunity was just you never know when it's going to happen and you just have to be ready to move fast. And I feel like we're so lucky with the Saku team that they have such a deep bench of like very articulate executives, and they recognized how important this situation was and were able to help work with us to move that through quickly and make it happen.
Yeah. And that bears mention too, is that none of this works unless the client understands how important it is and is as excited about it as your communications team. It's the engine that keeps the news running. 50% of the battle is
Ah,
making yourself available to talk to someone and to answer their questions generally, because that's another thing. People have this perception that the journalists only write what's in the press release, or that you get to determine the story. I mean, you get to determine what you say when you talk to a reporter, but you have to show up and talk to them in the first place if you want them to write about you.
yeah. And
So,
it's why the building the foundation is so important, because their executive team has been out there talking to reporters, practicing delivering their message, and refining that in all of these other places they've been visible, like podcasts and thought leadership, so that when this opportunity came about, it was just like seamless to move into that interview
exactly.
and be ready to deliver their message with clarity.
Yeah, for PR purposes, that's totally important for us. Like, that's our job, is to prepare them for that. Their job to dive into it and be ready to tell their story. But also for the reporter, it's their job. Before he ever called, he'd already thought of Saku. He'd already had this story in his mind. We didn't know what that story was, but he had already started developing a narrative and wanted to talk to them about it because he saw a part for them in that story that he's building. All of that information was already in his inbox. He went to write his story about, some of these really interesting applications for 3D printing in creating a new kind of battery for new kinds of applications. Who came top of mind? This is the other thing that can't be overstated, is the impact of that kind of coverage. They were saying, gosh, of the kinds of conversations we've been having for the last week, that makes a difference to their business as well. So the investment was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say that it's not like we haven't done any other work for Saku. I mean, they've won Time Magazine Best Invention. They've been mentioned in Fast Company for innovative ideas. Sandy Monroe used to have them on his Monroe Live all the time. The technology is fantastic. That
Yeah.
cannot be understated. There's a real story there. So, yeah, we can't take all the credit, but facilitating getting that real story told, there's some work involved. And primarily in helping people like Christopher Mims have the information that they need when they need it. That's some juggling that is always going on in the background. Somebody has to be constantly providing that information and making sure that it's going to the right people who need to hear about it. That's what we do in PR.
It takes time, and it takes a human touch to build those relationships between the media and our clients.
Yeah, I think so. And it's so much more satisfying when a relationship like that produces a story that isn't just they picked up, the headline from our news release and ran it in a bulleted list. That's actually a
Yeah.
feature. This is what's really going on. This is how it really works. And these are the cool things you can do with this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's real news.
Yeah. It's the best feeling sitting in a briefing with a client and someone from the media and seeing them both get really excited about
Yeah.
what they're talking about. Their energy is feeding off each other. And that always, leads to the best stories getting told.
And as far as I'm concerned, those are the best days.